The foreclosure notice came on a Thursday in early February, delivered by a sheriff's deputy who wouldn't meet Jennifer Morrison's eyes as he handed her the papers. She stood in the doorway of the apartment she could no longer afford, her daughter Emma clinging to her leg, and felt the last thread of hope snap inside her chest. 60 days. That's all the bank was giving them. 60 days to vacate the premises, to find somewhere else to go, to somehow conjure up a life from the wreckage of the past year. Jennifer was 32 years old, looked 45, and felt about 100. The divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. David had left her for someone younger, someone without stretch marks or dark circles under her eyes, someone who didn't work double shifts at a diner and still couldn't make rent. He'd taken everything that wasn't nailed down and disappeared to Arizona with his new girlfriend, leaving Jennifer with their 9-year-old daughter and a mountain of debt he'd accumulated and hidden until it was too late. She'd been working at Maggie's Diner in downtown Portland for 6 years, the kind of place where the coffee was always burnt and the tips were always too small. Her feet ached constantly, her back hurt from carrying trays, and no matter how many hours she worked, it was never enough. The math simply didn't work anymore. Rent, plus utilities, plus food, plus Emma's school supplies, plus the medical bills from when Emma had pneumonia last winter. It was like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. That evening, after Emma had gone to bed in the tiny room they shared, Jennifer sat at the kitchen table, sorting through mail she'd been avoiding for weeks. Bills, collection notices, advertisements for credit cards she'd never qualify for. And then, buried beneath a stack of past due statements, an envelope that looked different, heavy cream-colored paper, the kind that suggested money and old families and things Jennifer had never been part of. The return address was from a law firm in Montana, Whitaker and Associates, established 1923. Her hands shook slightly as she opened it, not from hope, but from the bone-deep exhaustion that had become her constant state of being. The letter was typed on paper so thick it felt expensive just to touch. "Dear Mrs. Morrison," it began, formal and distant in a way that made her want to stop reading immediately. "We are writing to inform you of the passing of Mrs. Dorothy Elizabeth Morrison, who died on December 18th of last year. As her sole surviving relative, you are the beneficiary of her estate, located at 1847 Blackwood Road, Timber County, Montana." Jennifer read the words 3 times before they started to make any sense. Dorothy Morrison. The name triggered something in her memory, faint and dusty, like a photograph that had been put away in a drawer and forgotten. Her father's aunt, maybe, or his mother's sister? Her father had died when Jennifer was 12, and most of his family history had died with him. Her mother had never talked about his side of the family, had always changed the subject when Jennifer asked questions. The letter continued in its bloodless legal language. There was property, a farmhouse and approximately 215 acres of land in rural Montana. No mortgage, no liens, no outstanding debts. It was hers if she wanted it, free and clear. All she had to do was come to Montana, meet with the lawyers, sign the papers, and take possession. The letter mentioned that the property had been vacant for several months and was located in a remote area with harsh winter conditions. They recommended she visit in spring, but the choice was hers. Jennifer sat there for a long time, staring at the letter, trying to process what it meant. Free land. A house with no rent, no landlord, no eviction notices. It sounded too good to be true, which in her experience meant it probably was. There had to be a catch. The place was probably falling apart, uninhabitable, maybe contaminated or built on a toxic waste dump. Nobody just gave away 200 acres of land and a house. But then again, she thought, looking around her cramped apartment with its water-stained ceiling and the mold growing in the bathroom corner that she couldn't afford to fix, what did she have to lose? They were going to be homeless in 60 days anyway. Even if the Montana property was a disaster, even if it was just 4 walls and a roof in the middle of nowhere, it was more than they had now. The next morning, after dropping Emma at school, Jennifer called the law firm. The receptionist transferred her to a Mr. Whitaker, who sounded like he was approximately 200 years old, his voice like gravel rolling in a tin can. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Morrison," he said when she explained who she was. "We've been trying to locate you for some time. Mrs. Dorothy Morrison was quite specific in her will. Everything goes to you, her only living blood relative." "I don't understand," Jennifer said, gripping the phone tighter. "I never even met her. Why would she leave me anything?" There was a pause, the sound of papers shuffling. "Mrs. Morrison was a very private individual. She had no children of her own, and your father was apparently the only family member she maintained any connection with, however distant. When he passed away, you became her closest living relative. She updated her will 5 years ago to reflect this." "What's the property like?" Jennifer asked. The letter said it's remote. Another pause, longer this time. "I'll be frank with you, Mrs. Morrison. The property is extremely remote. The nearest town, Timber Falls, has a population of about 300 people and is 45 minutes away on good roads. In winter, which lasts about 7 months up there, you can be snowed in for weeks at a time. Mrs. Morrison lived there alone for over 30 years. It's not an easy place. Remote, isolated, cut off from the world. To Jennifer, it sounded like heaven. No landlords, no eviction notices, no neighbors hearing her cry at night when she thought Emma was asleep. A place where they could start over, where nobody knew about David or the bankruptcy or the shame. "When can I see it?" she asked. 3 weeks later, Jennifer and Emma were driving north through Montana in Jennifer's 15-year-old Toyota, the one that burned oil and made a grinding noise whenever she went over 50 miles per hour. The lawyer had arranged everything: keys, property deed, even a small advance from what he called the estate settlement fund to help with travel expenses. It was $800, more money than Jennifer had seen in one place in over a year. She'd used half of it for gas and cheap motel rooms, and the other half she kept in her wallet like a talisman, proof that this wasn't just a fever dream. They drove north through Montana as February gave way to March, the landscape growing increasingly barren and beautiful in a way that made Jennifer's chest ache. The highways gave way to state routes, then county roads, then barely maintained tracks that wound through forests of pine and spruce so dense they seemed to block out the pale winter sun. Emma sat in the passenger seat, her nose pressed against the window, watching the world transform into something wild and untouched. "Mom," Emma said quietly, and there was something in her voice that made Jennifer glance over. "Why are all the houses empty?" Jennifer looked and realized Emma was right. Every few miles they'd pass a farmhouse or cabin, and every single one appeared abandoned. Roofs caving in, windows broken, yards overtaken by forest. It was as if people had simply walked away one day and never looked back, leaving their lives behind like shed skin. "Maybe they moved to bigger cities," Jennifer said, trying to sound casual, "for work or better schools." But it felt wrong. There was something about this place, about the quality of the silence that pressed against the car windows, that made her skin prickle with unease. The GPS had given up about an hour ago, so Jennifer was relying on printed directions from Mr. Whitaker. "Turn right at the collapsed barn. Continue for 2.3 miles past the old Jensen property. Look for the break in the tree line marked by 3 dead birches." The directions felt like something from another century. Landmarks that assumed you knew the area, that you belonged here. When they finally found Blackwood Road, it wasn't really a road at all. 2 frozen ruts separated by a spine of ice and dead grass, disappearing into the forest like a scar. The Toyota groaned and shuddered as Jennifer navigated the potholes, branches scraping against the doors like skeletal fingers. On either side, the forest pressed close, walls of pine and shadow that seemed to lean inward, watching. "There!" Emma pointed suddenly, and Jennifer saw it. Through the trees, a structure that made her breath catch. The farmhouse sat in a clearing that looked almost unnaturally perfect, a circle of land carved from the surrounding forest with geometric precision. The house itself was bigger than she'd expected, maybe 3,000 square feet, 2 stories of dark wood and stone that looked like it had been built to withstand anything. But something was wrong, something that made Jennifer's scalp tingle as she turned off the engine. The house was covered in ice, not just a little frost or winter accumulation, but completely encased, as if it had been dipped in glass. Every surface, every window, every beam of the wraparound porch was coated in a layer of ice at least an inch thick. The late afternoon sun caught it and threw back rainbows, making the whole structure shimmer like something from a fairy tale. But this wasn't a fairy tale. This was wrong, deeply wrong, in a way Jennifer couldn't articulate. "Wow," Emma breathed. "It's beautiful." Jennifer wasn't sure beautiful was the word she'd use. Unnatural, maybe. Impossible. Houses didn't freeze like this, not unless there was a serious plumbing leak or structural damage. Had the pipes burst? Was the whole place destroyed inside? Her heart sank as she imagined walking into a house full of mold and water damage, all her hopes dissolving like that $800 she'd already spent. They got out of the car, and the cold hit Jennifer like a physical force. This wasn't Portland cold, wasn't even normal winter cold. This was something else entirely, the kind of cold that seemed to seep straight through your clothes and into your bones, settling there like it planned to stay forever. The clearing was absolutely silent. No birds, no rustling animals, not even the whisper of wind through the trees. Just that heavy, pressing silence that made Jennifer want to whisper even though there was no one around to disturb. She walked up to the porch, her boots crunching on ice that had formed in strange patterns, almost like frost ferns, spreading across every surface. The front door was solid wood, old but beautifully made, with an iron handle that was frozen solid. Jennifer pulled the keys from her pocket, 3 of them on a ring, each one labeled in faded ink. The first key, marked front, wouldn't go into the lock. The ice was too thick. "We need to melt it," Emma said practically, and Jennifer realized her daughter was right. She went back to the car, found the plastic ice scraper she used for the windshield, and spent 20 minutes carefully chipping away at the lock until she could get the key to slide in. It turned with surprising ease, and the door swung open with a crack of breaking ice. The first thing that hit Jennifer was the cold. The inside of the house was colder than outside, if that was even possible. Her breath came out in clouds so thick she could barely see through them. But the second thing, the thing that made her stomach drop, was the smell. Not the musty, abandoned smell she'd expected, but something else entirely. Clean, almost sterile, with an underlying hint of something chemical and sharp that made her eyes water. "Hello?" Jennifer called out, her voice echoing through what sounded like a large, empty space. Nothing. Of course nothing. The house had been empty since December. Mr. Whitaker had been very clear about that. She stepped inside, Emma close behind her, and fumbled along the wall for a light switch. Her fingers found one, and when she flipped it, nothing happened. No power. That made sense. The utilities had probably been shut off months ago. But as her eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through the ice-covered windows, Jennifer began to make out shapes. The entryway opened into a massive main room, and everywhere she looked, she saw signs of hasty abandonment. Furniture covered in sheets, but not neatly. These sheets were thrown over things carelessly, as if someone had been in a hurry. The wooden floor was pristine, no dust, no debris, as if it had been cleaned recently. And on the walls between the ice-covered windows were things that made Jennifer's breath catch. Maps, dozens of them, pinned to the walls with pushpins. But not normal maps. These were topographical maps, the kind hikers used, with areas circled in red marker, and next to the maps, lists, handwritten lists of supplies, dates, numbers that didn't make any sense. Jennifer moved deeper into the house, her unease growing with each step. The kitchen was enormous, dominated by a commercial-grade stove that looked like it belonged in a restaurant, but it was the pantry that made her stop in her tracks. The door was standing open, and inside she could see shelves. not empty shelves waiting to be filled, but shelves packed with supplies. Canned goods, dried foods, batteries, water purification tablets, medical supplies. Hundreds of items, maybe thousands, all organized with military precision. "Mom, look at all this food," Emma said, reaching for a can of soup. Jennifer grabbed her wrist gently. "Don't touch anything yet, sweetie. We need to figure out what's going on here first." She pulled out her phone, hoping to call Mr. Whitaker, but there was no signal. Of course there wasn't. They were in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by mountains and forests that probably blocked any cell tower signal for 50 miles. The living room was stranger still. A massive stone fireplace dominated one wall, but surrounding it were things that didn't belong in a farmhouse. A ham radio setup, old but well-maintained, sitting on a desk with a logbook open beside it. Jennifer flipped through it carefully. The entries were dated, the last one from December 15th, just 3 days before Dorothy Morrison had died. 0800 hours, checked frequency 7.3, no traffic, weather holding, temperature -12, all systems nominal. All systems nominal. What systems? What was this place? Jennifer's hands were shaking as she continued exploring. In the hallway she found photographs on the wall. An older woman, thin and stern-looking, with grey hair pulled back in a tight bun. This must be Dorothy. In some photos she was younger, maybe in her 40s, standing in front of this very house. But it was the other photos that made Jennifer's skin crawl. Dorothy standing next to men in military uniforms, Dorothy shaking hands with someone in a suit who had government official written all over him. Dorothy in front of a chain-link fence with signs that read "Restricted Area" and "No Trespassing." Upstairs they found 4 bedrooms, all of them furnished but stark, almost monastic. Dorothy's bedroom was the largest, with a bed that looked like it hadn't been slept in for months. On the nightstand was a journal, leather-bound and old. Jennifer picked it up with trembling hands and opened to the first page. The date was January 3rd, 1993. And the handwriting was the same precise script from the logbook downstairs. "Day 1 of my watch. The government men left this morning. They gave me the keys, the codes, the instructions. They told me what I'm guarding and why it matters. They told me I can never tell anyone, that this secret dies with me. I'm 58 years old, and I volunteered to spend the rest of my life in isolation, protecting something that 99% of the world will never know exists. God help me. I think I've made a terrible mistake." Jennifer's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. She flipped through the pages, finding entries spanning decades. Dorothy had lived here alone for over 30 years, maintaining something, guarding something, keeping records that read like military reports. There were technical notes about generators and water filtration systems, about temperature controls and security protocols. And woven through it all was a loneliness so profound it made Jennifer want to weep. October 7th, 1998. Haven't spoken to another human being in 43 days. The supply drop came by helicopter today, but they wouldn't even turn off the engine, just dropped the crates and left. I'm starting to forget what my own voice sounds like. March 15th, 2005. The government stopped the supply drops 2 years ago. I think they've forgotten about this place, about me, but I can't leave. I made a promise. Someone has to watch over it. Someone has to make sure it stays secure. December 1st, 2024. I'm dying. I can feel it in my bones. The cancer is spreading faster than I thought. I've updated my will to leave everything to Jennifer, my nephew's daughter. She doesn't know me, doesn't know any of this. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe she'll have the courage to walk away from this burden, something I never could. The final entry was dated December 12th, just 6 days before Dorothy died. The ice storm is getting worse. I've activated the emergency protocols. If I don't survive this, if Jennifer finds this journal, she needs to know. The basement. Everything is in the basement. The codes are in the fireplace. God forgive me for what I'm leaving her. Jennifer closed the journal, her mind reeling. The basement. She hadn't seen a basement door yet. She went back downstairs, Emma following silently, sensing something had fundamentally shifted. In the kitchen, Jennifer looked more carefully at the layout. There, almost hidden behind the pantry door, was another door. Heavy steel painted the same color as the walls, with 3 industrial locks and a handle that looked like it belonged on a bank vault. Above the door, stenciled in faded yellow paint, were words that made Jennifer's blood run cold. Authorized personnel only, security clearance required, emergency protocol 7. She tried the keys from the ring Mr. Whitaker had given her. None of them fit the locks. The door remained stubbornly, mysteriously sealed. Jennifer stood there, staring at it, feeling the weight of Dorothy's loneliness and secrets pressing down on her shoulders. What was down there? What had Dorothy been guarding for 3 decades? And why had the government apparently forgotten about it? "Mom," Emma said quietly, tugging on Jennifer's sleeve, "I'm cold. Can we maybe start a fire or something?" Jennifer nodded, grateful for something normal to focus on. They went to the fireplace, and Jennifer began examining it for firewood. The wood box next to it was full of logs, perfectly stacked, as if Dorothy had prepared them before she died. But as Jennifer reached for a log, her hand brushed against a stone in the fireplace surround. It moved slightly under her touch. Her heart beginning to race again, Jennifer pushed the stone harder. There was a click, and then the entire back panel of the firebox swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a cavity behind the flames would normally be. Inside, protected by the stone, was a metal box. Jennifer pulled it out carefully, her hands shaking. The box was cold, covered in a thin layer of ice with a combination lock on the front. But taped to the top was an envelope with a single word written on it in that same precise handwriting. "Jennifer." "Hey, I know this story is getting intense, right? If you're as hooked as I am and want to see where this goes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what Jennifer finds in that basement. And here's a question for you. If you inherited a place like this, would you open that basement door, or would you walk away? Drop your answer in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious what you all would do, because I'm honestly not sure what the right choice is here. Now, let's see what's in that envelope. Jennifer's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, and a smaller piece with a series of numbers written in pencil. The letter was brief, written in Dorothy's precise handwriting, but the words seemed to shake on the page as Jennifer read them. "Jennifer, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've found your way here. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the burden I'm placing on you. Sorry for the secrets. Sorry for dragging you into something you never asked for. But I had no choice. This couldn't fall into the wrong hands, and there was no one else. The combination will open the box. Inside, you'll find keys and codes for the basement. What's down there has been hidden since 1962, during the height of the Cold War. The government built it, and then, when the political climate changed, they buried the records and pretended it never existed. I was supposed to be temporary, a caretaker until they figured out what to do with it. That was 32 years ago. They never came back. What's in the basement is worth more than you can imagine, enough to change your life, to give your daughter everything you've ever wanted for her. But it comes with a price. If you open that door, if you take what's inside, you'll be taking responsibility for keeping the secret. There are people who would kill for what's down there, people who've been searching for it for decades. The ice is my final protection. I sabotaged the heating system before I died, knowing the house would freeze. It's bought you time, but not much. You need to decide quickly. Take it and run, or leave it and walk away. Either way, destroy this letter and the journal. Some secrets should die. I'm sorry I couldn't be the family you deserved. Dorothy. Jennifer read the letter 3 times, her mind spinning. Worth more than she could imagine, people who would kill for it. The words seemed ridiculous, like something from a movie, but the evidence was all around her. The ice-covered house, the military maps, the decades of isolation. Dorothy hadn't been crazy. She'd been protecting something real. The combination on the smaller paper was 6 digits. Jennifer's fingers were so numb from cold, she could barely feel the dial as she spun it. Left to 14, right to 37, left to 9, right to 52, left to 3, right to 28. The lock clicked open. Inside the metal box were 3 keys on a ring, each one marked with colored tape, red, blue, yellow, and beneath them, a laminated card with more numbers and codes, along with a simple diagram showing the layout of what lay below. The basement wasn't just a basement. It was a bunker, extending 3 levels down into the bedrock, with multiple chambers and what looked like a vault at the very bottom. "Mum, what is all this?" Emma asked, her voice small and frightened. Jennifer looked at her daughter, at the fear and confusion in her eyes, and felt something inside her shift. Emma deserved better than this, better than mysteries and secrets and houses that froze from the inside out. But Emma also deserved a future, deserved college and opportunities, and a life that wasn't defined by poverty and struggle. And if what was down there could provide that, didn't Jennifer owe it to her daughter to at least look? "I don't know yet, baby," Jennifer said, pulling Emma close, "but we're going to find out together, okay?" Emma nodded against her shoulder, and Jennifer could feel her shivering. They needed to do something about the cold. According to Dorothy's letter, the heating system had been sabotaged, but there had to be a way to fix it, or at least to get the fireplace working properly. It took Jennifer another hour of searching, but she finally found the mechanical room off the kitchen. The heating system was there, a propane furnace that looked like it was from the 1980s, but well-maintained, and someone, Dorothy presumably, had deliberately disconnected a series of crucial components. The parts were sitting on a workbench nearby, labeled with tape. "Reconnect in sequence after decision made." Dorothy had thought of everything. Jennifer wasn't a mechanic, but she'd learned basic repairs from necessity over the years. Following the labels and using common sense, she reconnected the components, then went outside to check the propane tank. It was full, covered in ice, but intact. When she came back inside and flipped the furnace switch, nothing happened for a long moment. Then, with a whoosh that made both her and Emma jump, the furnace roared to life. Warm air began flowing through the vents, and Jennifer could have cried with relief. "Okay," she said, mostly to herself. "Okay, we can do this." She fed Emma some of the canned soup from the pantry, heated on the gas stove. It was chicken noodle, dated from last year, perfectly safe. As Emma ate, color returning to her cheeks, Jennifer stood in front of the basement door. The red key fit the top lock. It turned smoothly, and she heard a heavy bolt slide back. The blue key fit the middle lock. The yellow key fit the bottom lock. 3 keys, 3 locks, 3 distinct sounds as they disengaged. The door swung open, revealing concrete steps descending into darkness. But as Jennifer reached for a light switch, she heard something that made her freeze. A sound from outside, the crunch of tires on frozen ground, moving slowly up the long driveway. She moved to the window and peered out through the ice. A black SUV was approaching the house, moving carefully over the rutted road. It stopped about 50 feet from the house, and 3 men got out. They were dressed in casual clothes, jeans and heavy coats, but there was something about the way they moved, the way they spread out as they approached, that screamed military or law enforcement. One of them looked directly at the house, and even from this distance, Jennifer could see his expression. Hard, focused, determined. He said something to his companions, and they began moving toward the house with purpose. Jennifer's heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She hadn't taken anything. She hadn't done anything wrong. This was her property, legally inherited. But the look on that man's face said he didn't care about legal niceties. "Emma," Jennifer whispered urgently, "we need to go downstairs, right now." She grabbed her daughter's hand and pulled her toward the basement door. Behind them she could hear footsteps on the porch, then a heavy knock on the front door. "Mrs. Morrison," a man's voice called out, calm and professional. "My name is Agent Carson. I'm with the Department of Energy. We need to talk to you about this property. Please open the door." Department of Energy. What did the Department of Energy want with a farmhouse in Montana? Jennifer didn't wait to find out. She pulled Emma through the basement door, closed it behind them, and heard the automatic locks engage with 3 heavy clicks. The stairwell was dark, but motion sensor lights flickered on as they descended, revealing concrete walls painted institutional grey. From above, Jennifer could hear the men entering the house. They weren't being subtle anymore. She heard furniture being moved, doors being opened, voices calling out. The stairs went down much farther than any normal basement should go. 20 steps, 30, 40. The temperature dropped as they descended, and Jennifer could hear machinery humming somewhere below. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a corridor that stretched ahead for what looked like 100 feet. Doors lined both sides, each one marked with stenciled numbers. Storage 1, Storage 2, Medical Bay, Communications Room. This wasn't a basement. This was a Cold War bunker, exactly as Dorothy's diagram had shown. Jennifer's breath came in short gasps as she pulled Emma down the corridor. The motion sensor lights flickered on ahead of them, revealing more doors, more rooms, more evidence of a facility that had been built to survive the end of the world. Behind them, she could hear the men upstairs, their voices raised now, urgent. They'd found the basement door. They were trying to open it. The locks would hold, Jennifer told herself. Those were military-grade locks, but for how long? "Mom, I'm scared," Emma whispered, and Jennifer squeezed her hand. "I know, baby, me too, but we're going to be okay." She wasn't sure if she believed that, but she needed Emma to believe it. At the end of the corridor was a larger door, this one with a wheel lock like a submarine hatch. The laminated card from the metal box showed this was the vault, the main storage chamber. Jennifer pulled out the card, found the code sequence, and began entering numbers on a keypad beside the door. 8 digits, then a star key, then 4 more digits. There was a beep, then a series of mechanical clicks. The wheel lock turned on its own, motorized, and the door swung open with a hiss of air pressure equalizing. The vault was massive, at least 40 feet square, with a ceiling that arched overhead like a cathedral. And stacked on reinforced shelving that ran floor to ceiling were metal boxes. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each one roughly the size of a shoebox, sealed with bands of metal and marked with numbers. But it was what sat on a table in the center of the room that made Jennifer's breath catch and her knees go weak. Gold bars. Dozens of them stacked in neat pyramids, each one stamped with official markings. United States Treasury, fine gold, 400 troy ounces. The numbers swam before Jennifer's eyes as she tried to comprehend what she was seeing. She moved closer, almost in a trance, and picked up one of the bars. It was shockingly heavy, at least 25 pounds, and cold to the touch. There were 12 bars on the table, and according to a clipboard lying nearby, with Dorothy's handwriting on it, this was just a sample. The rest were in the metal boxes on the shelves. Jennifer did the math in her head, her hands shaking. 12 bars, times 25 pounds times, what, $2,000 per ounce? No, gold was worth more than that now. Way more. She pulled out her phone, forgetting there was no signal, but the calculator still worked. 400 troy ounces per bar, times current gold price of roughly $2,000 per ounce. That was $800,000 per bar. Times 12 visible bars was $9.6 million, just sitting on this table. And if the boxes on the shelves contained more bars, if even a fraction of them held gold instead of documents or whatever else might be stored here, then Dorothy's letter had been right. This was worth more than Jennifer could imagine. She walked to the nearest shelf, pulled down one of the metal boxes. It was heavy, promising. She fumbled with the seal, broke it open, and lifted the lid. Gold. 4 more bars, packed in foam, pristine and perfect. Jennifer's vision swam. She opened another box. Gold. Another. Gold. Not all the boxes contained gold. Some held documents, some held what looked like bearer bonds, some held things she didn't recognize. But enough of them held gold that Jennifer's mind couldn't process the numbers anymore. From somewhere far above, she heard a sound that made her stomach drop. An explosion, muted by distance and concrete, but unmistakable. They were blowing the locks on the basement door. Agent Carson and his men weren't asking permission anymore. Jennifer looked at Emma, saw her daughter's eyes wide with terror, and felt something primal rise up inside her. No. She hadn't come this far, survived this much, only to have someone take this away from her. This was hers, legally, rightfully hers. Dorothy had left it to her, had spent 32 years protecting it, and Jennifer would be damned if she'd let some government agents in black SUVs steal her daughter's future. But how could she stop them? She was one exhausted single mother with no weapons, no training, no resources except what was in this room. And then her eyes fell on the clipboard again, on Dorothy's notes. Emergency Protocol 7, Main Power Shutoff, Corridor 2, Panel C, Code 6639. Activating will seal all internal doors and trigger lockdown mode. Backup generator provides 72 hours of Vault life support. Jennifer grabbed the clipboard and ran back into the corridor. Panel C was clearly marked 50 feet back toward the stairs. She could hear footsteps now. Heavy boots on concrete, men descending the stairs. They'd be here in seconds. She reached the panel, yanked it open and punched in the code. 6639. For a moment, nothing happened. Then alarms began blaring, red lights started flashing, and throughout the facility she heard the sound of heavy doors slamming shut. The men on the stairs began shouting. One of them broke into a run, but he was too late. A blast door dropped from the ceiling with a hydraulic hiss, sealing off the corridor from the stairwell. They were trapped on the other side, and Jennifer and Emma were trapped on this side, locked in a Cold War bunker with $215 million in gold and maybe 72 hours of air. Jennifer ran back to the vault, where Emma was standing frozen in the center of all that wealth, all that possibility, all that danger. "It's okay," Jennifer said, pulling her daughter close, though nothing was okay. "It's going to be okay." But her mind was racing. 72 hours, 3 days. The men outside would call for backup, maybe bring in cutting equipment to breach the doors. But 3 days might be enough to figure out a plan, enough to document everything, enough to make this public if she needed to. Because that was her leverage, Jennifer realized. The government had buried this facility, pretended it didn't exist. If she could prove it did exist, if she could make it public, they couldn't just make her disappear. She looked around the vault, and her eyes fell on something she'd missed before. In the corner, covered with a tarp, was equipment. Modern equipment, not Cold War era. A laptop computer sealed in plastic, a satellite phone, a small portable generator. Dorothy's emergency supplies, the things she'd kept ready in case she ever needed to prove what was down here, or call for help, or survive if something went wrong. Jennifer pulled the tarp off and examined the satellite phone. It was in a protective case, with a note taped to it. Charged monthly, should work anywhere with view of sky. Emergency access hatch in vault ceiling, ladder in storage 4. An emergency hatch. A way out that didn't go through the men trying to break in. Jennifer felt hope surge through her chest for the first time since she'd heard that explosion. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to be brave for just a little bit longer. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded, and Jennifer saw something in her daughter's eyes that hadn't been there before. Not just fear, but determination. Her daughter was stronger than Jennifer had given her credit for. She found the ladder in storage 4, exactly where the note said it would be. It was aluminum, lightweight but sturdy, and when she propped it up in the vault, it reached to a hatch in the ceiling that Jennifer hadn't even noticed. The hatch had another combination lock, but Dorothy's card had that code too. Jennifer climbed up, her muscles screaming, and entered the numbers. The hatch opened with a groan of unused hinges, revealing a vertical shaft that went up, 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 at least 50 feet. At the top, Jennifer could see a circle of grey daylight. "We're going to climb," she told Emma. "It's going to be hard, but we can do this." She helped Emma onto the ladder, staying below her in case she slipped, and they began to climb. Jennifer's arms were shaking by the time they were halfway up, her legs burning, but she kept going. Behind them, far below, she could hear the muted sounds of cutting equipment. The men were trying to breach the blast door, but they were too late. Jennifer and Emma reached the top of the shaft, and Jennifer pushed open another hatch, this one camouflaged with earth and dead grass. They emerged into the forest, about 200 yards from the house, behind a stand of pines that hid them from view. Jennifer pulled out the satellite phone, powered it on, and watched as it searched for signal. 3 bars. Enough. She dialed 911 first, because whatever else happened, she wanted this on record. She reported armed intruders at her property, gave the address, made sure the dispatcher logged everything. Then she called the only lawyer she knew, Mr. Whitaker. "Mr. Whitaker," she said when he answered, her voice shaking but firm. "This is Jennifer Morrison. I'm at the Montana property, and I need you to listen very carefully. There are government agents here trying to seize the property illegally. I'm activating my rights under the 5th Amendment. This is my property, legally inherited, and I will not surrender it without due process. I'm also documenting everything and will go public if necessary. Do you understand?" There was a long pause. Then Whitaker's old voice came back, stronger than she'd ever heard it. "Mrs. Morrison, don't move, don't talk to anyone else. I'm making some calls. This is bigger than I thought, but Dorothy chose you for a reason. Hold your ground." Jennifer ended the call and looked at Emma, at her brave, beautiful daughter, who deserved so much more than a life of struggle and poverty. "We're going to be okay," she said, and this time she believed it. "We're going to fight for this, and we're going to win." Below them, she could see more vehicles arriving, more men in suits, but she also heard sirens in the distance, local police responding to her 911 call. The situation was getting complicated for Agent Carson and his friends. They couldn't just make her disappear now. Too many people knew. Jennifer sat down in the snow, pulled Emma close, and waited. The gold wasn't going anywhere. The bunker wasn't going anywhere. And neither was she. This was her inheritance, her daughter's future, and she would protect it with everything she had, just like Dorothy had protected it for 32 years. Some burdens, Jennifer realized, weren't burdens at all. They were gifts disguised as challenges, waiting for someone brave enough to claim them. Well, there you have it. Jennifer and Emma's story is just beginning, but they've already proven they're stronger than anyone gave them credit for. If this story moved you, if it made you think about courage and inheritance and what we're willing to fight for, please hit that subscribe button. This channel is all about stories of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, and I love building this community with all of you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Jennifer's situation? Would you have climbed out of that bunker or handled it differently? And here's the bigger question. What did this story teach you about standing your ground when everything seems impossible? Share your thoughts. Share your own stories if you feel comfortable. We're all in this together, learning from each other's experiences. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and remember, sometimes the greatest treasures come with the greatest challenges, but that doesn't mean they aren't worth fighting for.